We are recording.
Baruch haba, welcome everyone to our class on Sefer Higayom. As we always do, we give a little bit of an orientation. The Sefer has three parts, what he calls Esek Higayom, which is a discussion of concepts themselves, what type of concepts they are, the variations they go through, the various levels they go through. The second part of the book, which we're into, is going to explain terms, statements, and syllogisms. And finally, in the last part of the book, he's going to tell us how to use his method, both in learning and learning things like, topics, items, and also how to do hakiras. We're in the first part, learning about the various logical terms, terminology. He broke them up into this unit here, 21 different types. And the last time we got together, we did a little application in the in SIBA. So during the party we had for the Sefer, so I used Sefer Higayom and I explained all the different types of SIBAs, and not all of them in depth, but just briefly, and how the Chavas Lavavas brought his example of when the policeman comes and tries to hit a person, so the person's afraid of the stick, and the stick is only a siba kalis. He should be really afraid of the poel. And then the famous, very, very dramatic statement he makes is that the further away the siba is, more important it is. In our language, there's a siba smucha and there's a siba rachoka. So the siba smucha is the policeman, but when you go back steps, you realize he's been sending by his officer, and his officer to the officer, to the minister, and finally to the king himself. So he said the king's order was more important, and he's the siba rachoka. And what seems to me most important to a person is the siba asamucha, which is the club, and that's really the least of all his problems. So I said that we had like a lot of people at the party, and then I first said, Baruch, who's the siba asiba, he's the cause of everything. And then, Rabbi Goldstein, and all the people that helped in the book. So I used the Sefer Higayom in all its, not its all its parts, but in a lot of its, a lot of the chidushim there in the little talk. Okay, so that's what we did last week, and we did a little application. Now we're going to be dealing with the next two aspects, which are no-say and mischaber. The subject and things that we say about the subject. And the question is whether mischaber, we'll get into it, maybe we'll discuss it or you'll think about it, whether a mischaber is like a nasu. In Derek Tfunos, he broke things up also to the no-say and the nasu. And here also, we're not specifically speaking about a statement. That's the key point here, where we're talking about logically. Logically, you'd be talking about a subject, and then you can describe its attributes. The formal statement is the next step. But every no-say that you're thinking about is going to have certain qualities attached to it. He's going to break it up into here, these three, what he calls the tochi, the nismach, and the nasu. So you see he does use the nasu here, and we'll go through it and we'll see how he's using those terms. Okay, let's go into the text. Okay. He says the no-say. No-say is the subject, and we're talking in logical terms. We talk about a subject, hu hadavar sheyischaber lav ma. It's the thing upon which you're going to attach other things. V'yischalek l'nosei v'osek. There's two types of subjects. One he calls the noseg, and the other one he calls the aseg. What is the difference between a noseg and an aseg? A noseg hu shiakabel bo o alav ma. A subject is something that receives something. Derech mashal. Ha'esh lachom. The fire is going to receive, so to speak, the quality of being hot. Okay. So what is the asek then? The asek is she'alav yasok osek. It's the thing which does the osek, which is the activity. Derech mashal. Hamara, when you think about a mirror, what activity does it do? It does the activity of seeing, or making someone be seen, actually. Okay, so we were talking about together, Rabbi Sack and myself, but the way I understand it is there's static and active subjects. So I brought the example. There's a difference if you talk about our avas lazik, and you could talk about a shore or a mazik or a hezek, a mazik, let's say. A shore is a static item, and you say things about the shore. One of the things you could say about the shore is that it does damage. When we're talking about a mazik, so that is a noun which is describing an activity. So that's how I understand it, the difference between a noseg and an asek. Two types of subjects. One is static, and one is an active one.
So providing chaim is more static.
That's the H. The H has qualities.
Right, but it gives off heat. So the question is, why is that called static? Let's say
what I meant is by static, right? What I meant is static because you're going to attach things to it. It's not an activity, even though it's burning and it's causing heat. But it's a subject that you're going to say things about. It's not an act. It's not a active. It's not a. I don't know how to say it better than that. It's not a subject that's.
Right. So the asek of Aish would be consuming its fuel. Let's say. Right. Was the mirror, even though it really is doing nothing, it's just a piece of glass sitting on the wall. But the reflection is actively changing at all times. So I'm not,
right. It's doing something and not being spoken about. Is that a little better? The Aish is something that you speak about. You tell me all about Aish. It could be it has yellow color. It's one of the four elements. It has heat. It's something you're telling me about. But an asek is what it's doing. Like like he says, the asek of higayon is concepts.
Mm-hmm.
It's playing with concepts. So I'm not attaching things to it. I'm telling you what it does.
Right. Okay.
That helps. It wasn't very simple. I did not get, to tell you the truth, a very clear definition, even with the discussion of Rabbi Sackton. The difference between, and he doesn't mention any. Yeah, I wish he would give more examples than just this one. Okay. But okay, what's the difference between a mirror and an Aish? Okay. Talking about the asek of a mirror, the asek of a mirror. He doesn't say the asek of Aish is heating, right?
Right.
He calls the Aish as a noseg. Why didn't he say that the asek is heating? The asek of Aish is heating. Why didn't he say that? He said, no, Aish is a noseg, and it does things. Okay. If you can come up with a better definition, please do.
Right.
You have to think about it. I mean, the other ones are clearer.
Right.
The noseg also is divided to what he calls a muchlat or a mugbal noseg, an absolute or a conditional noseg. What is the muchlat? The muchlat hu shischaber lo meschaber bli shum gvul t'nai. It's a subject that you attach things to unconditionally. For instance, ha'esh meschaber lo hachom v'hechlet. When you talk about the eish, qualities of eish that are muchlat, one of the muchlat qualities is being hot, right? It may be different colors, that's not, as we'll see, that'll be mugbal, but one of the muchlat, the absolute qualities of eish is hot. What is a mugbal quality? Shischaber lo hameschaber b'fi inyan echad o havchana echad. There's where we're going to talk about the subject in one aspect. For instance, hakushi no se leloma, when we talk about a black person being white. So he says, lobu b'china chulo. It doesn't mean his whole body is white. Ela b'chinat echad michelakov. Hainu h09. It's only talking about one of his parts, which is his teeth. Okay, so when we talk about the nose of a black person, we could say that as far as a nose, he has a certain mugbal aspect to him, which is called whiteness. In other words, it's not there totally, muchlat in the whole, in its essence, completely like the heat, but it's there in a certain limited aspect in the relationship of his teeth.
Yeah, so the question is muchlat and mugbal opposites of each other? They're not. They're just two different, because muchlat muchlat means that it's sort of like its essence, because if it would not have the chaim, it would not be eish. I mean, so something that goes always with eish is always its chaim, whereas he's saying that mugbal means that it's not in completeness, but there's a limited area of it which is leiven. So the two don't seem to be opposites. They just seem to be two. He's just mentioning two things at once. Is that everything else seems to be like opposites?
Well, it's not opposites. It's just a question of how much of the quality exists in the subject.
So muchlat means it's complete. In other words, it's eish it's completely hot. All areas of it is hot, and there's no area of eish which is not going to be hot, and any area of it which would not be hot would not be eish. So it's muchlat. And whereas mugbal, he's saying, is that you could describe an area of the kushi as leiven, but it's not complete. Okay, so in other words, it's either
complete or incomplete.
Okay, yeah. Would that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Now, why is it important logic? Because you can make mistakes in your thinking if you attribute an attribute to something which is only mugbal to muchlat, or vice versa. Okay, so you say he's not white. Well, it's not true. He's not white muchlat, but he is white in a certain bechina. Okay, so that's why it's important to understand. Od mischalek hanoseh lemiyuchad o bilti miyuchad. So now there's unique and common. For instance, hamiyuchad lemikrehu shelo yimsahu zeh below zeh. He says that the miyuchad is that the subject has a unique relationship with this quality, and it'll never be found one without the other. So I would have said, we'll see, let's see example, and then we'll compare the two. Derech mashal, hachom v'ha'esh lo yematzu zeh below zeh. You won't find heat and fire one without the other. Where there's fire, there's heat. There's fire, there's heat. Okay, so now that's not a question of how much of it is hot. Like the fire, all of it is hot, right? But here, it's a question of is it always there? Okay, is it a unique quality of H such that if you don't have one, you don't have the other? It's a little like you're trying to say before the mukhlat. But mukhlat is really, I think, just a question of how much of it has the heat.
Right.
Right? So when we fire it, all of it has the heat. Okay. But this one is talking about, is it miyuchad? What is the particular quality of H? Remember, he said, for instance, laughter. Well, he's an example here. Let him speak. What about the built-in miyuchad? Hu she'ena miyuchad in mikrehu. This is a certain mikra, an aspect that is not unique to the subject. Eli yamotze hamikra hu gam b'zulaso. You'll find this mikra in other things also. So it's not unique to the subject. Derech mashal. Habal chai hiyos nira. Strange example, that's what he said. An animal that we perceive. Kikol bal chai nira. All animals are perceived. Ach yesh nira she'eno bal chai. But there's certain things that we perceive that are not bal chai. So when you talk about seeing things, bal chai definitely has a quality of something being seen, unlike maybe who knows, electrical forces or malachim and things like that, which we don't see. But it doesn't share, but it shares that quality with a lot of other things. Okay, so I mean, when we talk about qualities of the subject, some of them are unique, that the subject can't be pictured without it, and some of them are shared. Okay, remember he spoke about also there in Tumas, you also spoke about the Segula. Segula was unique, but it was at a different level. I don't know if he's going to talk about that here. I don't think he will, but we'll discuss it anyway. But so okay, so what's the difference between the mukhlat mugbal and the miyuchad and built miyuchad? The mukhlat mugbal is the question of how much of it is distributed in the subject. Okay, and the miyuchad is it peculiar to this subject and only this subject, or do other subjects have the same quality? Okay.
Right. It's interesting. In the miyuchad, he's saying that shlayim tzu zeh b'lei zeh. But it's only going one way, though. He's saying that he's not saying the other way around. That you wouldn't find chaim without eish. Right. It's just that you wouldn't find the eish without the chaim. Right. It's not zeh b'lei zeh, but zeh b'lei zeh. It's
no, I don't think it's a double way.
Right. It could be it's a one-way street. You wouldn't find the Eish without the Chaim. Chaim theoretically could be found without Eish. And I mean, there's other things that create warmth. You have the wells of Tveria, the springs of Tveria, that there's no Eish there.
Right. Right. Yes. Okay, so that's the end of his discussion. No say. The no say he talked about what the best I can get the static no says or subjective no-says, where you attach things to, and it's what the subject is and what the subject does. Maybe that's a better way to say it, between the no-say and the yesek, what it is and what it does. Then he broke down the no-say into the mukhlat mukbal, which was how much of it has a certain quality, and then the miyuchad built-in miyuchad, is it unique to that subject or not? Now we're going to look at the other side of the no-say and talk about the mischaber. Let's talk about because the subject has things attached to it, which is called the mischaber. So now we want to look at the mischaber's relationship to the subject, not the subject's relationship to the mischaber. Okay, let's see what he says here. Ha-mischaber hu ma she-mischaber el ha-nosei. Okay. The mischaber is the thing that's attached to the no-say. That's good. Now, he divides that into tochachi v'nismach. Okay, tochachi v'nismach. Let's see what he says. Tochachi is the internal one, the one that's attached to it. Let's see. Ha-tochachi hu shemischaber v'toch no-say v'lo yohol lios bilto. He says the internal one is, the internal nasul, the attachment here, is attached to the subject, and that subject can never be without it. Let him explain himself. Again. Now, that quality of the mischaber, which is attached to the subject, can be miyuchad to the subject or not miyuchad to the subject. Just as we spoke about the subject relationship to the mischaber. Now, the mischaber's relationship could be the mischaber has a miyuchad relationship. They all built a miyuchad. What does it mean, a miyuchad relationship? Hu shelo yimotze ela benosim mimin echad. Hu shelo yimotze ela benosim mimin echad. It's a quality that's found in the same min. V'yischalek v'shalom u'bilti shalom. Let him explain himself. Hamiyuchad hashalom hu hanimsa b'kol noso b'chol zman v'lo b'sulaso. The mischaber, which he calls a miyuchad hashalom, is found in the subject all the time, and it's never found without it. That means the subject's never found without it. So it's a quality that we're going to say of the subject, which is always there, and it's never departs from it. Derech mashal. Hergesh labal chai. An animal, okay, we want to now talk about the mischaber called the ability to feel or to sense. Okay, so that's something that all animals have, and they have all the time. Okay, it's a quality that is miyuchad, and it's also miyuchad hashalom. What is the bilti shalom? Hu hanimsa b'nosei echad b'yichud. It's found in one subject uniquely. What does that mean? Perisho. Lo b'sulaso, ach lo b'kulo, v'lo b'kol eit. It's not found in another subject, but it's not found in the whole subject or all the time. Derech mashal. Oh, here it is. Haschok hu miyuchad la'adam. Laughter is a quality that's unique to man. Kilo nimsa b'zulaso. No other animal has this quality of laughter. I would say a laughing hyena that just makes noises, but the quality of laughter is found in man. Ach, eino ba'adam b'chol eis, but it's not a quality that is found all the time in man. It happens to be unique, but it's not found all the time. So certain time, so this is what he called the svula in Derek Phonos. Okay, so we have certain unique qualities found in a subject that are there all the time, and then we have certain qualities that are there all the time but are not unique. Okay, that's the two differences. Okay, so we can think of like the ability to reason in man, okay, is unique and it's there all the time, whereas the ability of laughter is also unique, but it's a different type of uniqueness. So maybe the texture of man's skin is also something that's unique, but it's well, that is there all the time, but it just, that is there all the time. I shouldn't say that. Okay, more than laughter, can you think of another quality that's unique to man, but is not, and no other quality has it, but is not present all the time.
I mean, speech is the same thing. I mean, you can talk if you want to. You don't always have to be talking.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, speech is also the same thing. That's correct. That's correct. Right. You don't have to be talking all the time. That's correct. Very good. So that's what he calls the miyuchad. Let's see what the built-in miyuchad is. Hu shemotze lenosim miminim shonim. It's found in many different types. The miyuchad was only found in one min. But this is not found in one min. It's found in many types. Derech mashal. Ha'atek mimakom lamakom. movement, from the ability to move from one place to the next. She'yimotzei la'odom, you'll find that in man. She'yimotzei gam ken le'bal chayim, v'gam ken le'domamim. Yeah, domamim can move. I guess water. Yeah, water can move from place to place. Okay, so what's the difference between the miyuchad and the built-in miyuchad? The miyuchad means, he says, it's something that exists really in one type. It's unique to one particular type. Okay. Now, some things are there all the time, and some things are not. Like he said, man always feels, but whether he talks, it's not always there. But whatever it is miyuchad. These qualities are miyuchad to man. And then there's certain qualities that man shares with other things, like the ability to go from place to place. Okay, that's how he broke up the two types. So that's the what he called the tochachi, the internal qualities of man, or not according to Torah qualities, which exist in one type as opposed to many types. Let's see what he calls the nismach. The nismach, the mechalek, the nitzav u'mahalech. Standing and moving. What do you mean the nitzav? O chona al hanose atzmo. It rests on the subject. O nimsi yachad imo, or is found with him. O sovev u'magbiloso, or it limits or defines him. What does that mean? For instance, derech mashal. Halavush chona al haguf. Clothes rests on man. Okay, so it's an attribute of man, a mischaber, something to man, but it's not tochachi. It's not internal. It's something that is upon him, or the, like he said before, the tzipui in Tfunos, the what is that called? Gilding on wood or something. Okay, these things are surrounded but are not part of it. Now, another type of nismach is something that he says is found together with it. For instance, im latest motion nimsa yachad milui habayis ora. With the birth of Moshe, simultaneously there existed, the house was filled with light. Okay, so that's not talking about Moshe himself, but was talking about something that existed simultaneously with Moshe Rabbeinu, or on Har Sinai, with the giving of the Torah. So we had barakos and all these other things that exist simultaneously around it or associated with. And the third one he talks about is Zman Magbil Hapula Shenase B'Yom Ploni B'Shas Ploni. The Zman is a limitation of an action that was done on a certain on a certain day at a certain hour. So that's what he said. It's a limit. It's a limitation, but it's not internal. It's an external mischaber to the nose that we're talking about. Let's see what the mishalech is. Hamahalech is magdim lenose obo acharav, whereas the nitzav, which we spoke about, are things that happen with it. But this, the mahalech, means that it's something that precedes the subject or comes after it. Al kain yishalek the kodem and nimshach. So we can talk about the kodem, the precedent, or what came before, or what was a consequent of it. For instance, derech mashal, haviv kodem l'kayetz. Spring is before summer. Ha'asiv bo acharav. Fall follows the winter. So we're talking about relationships of the mischaber to the subject. The first one we spoke about were internal relationships that the mischaber has. that are unique or not unique to the subject, or could be shared with many, but it's internal aspects. Now these are things that are associated with the subject, either like clothes that they rest upon it, or they exist together with it, but are not it itself, like the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, or it limits it, like he said, time. And the Mahalach also now is associated with the subject, but it's a mischaber that either comes before the subject or follows after the subject in time. So it doesn't exist simultaneously with it. It's not associated with it at the same time, but it's associated with it as either before or after. Now, as I said, the reason why that we have to know about these divisions is because they have nafkaminas when we try to make syllogisms, or we try to, syllogism in hekashim. When you put two things together, if you're not careful, you could say that a black man is white, when it's not true. The whiteness is only a certain aspect of him. Okay. Or things that exist associated with it, not the thing itself, which is a very interesting example. Moshe Rabbeinu, what was the relationship of the light of the room to Moshe Rabbeinu? Did he have an internal light that he emanated from, or did a Kodesh Baruch Hu light up the room when he was there? That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to it, but the point is sometimes things exist simultaneously with something else and are not defining the thing itself. So you have to be very, very careful in your logical analysis. Now he's going to give a third division of a mischaber, how the mischaber relates to the nosei. So he says, O yischalek mischaber, O nasu. Now here you see, very interesting. Here he also calls him mischaber the nasu. Okay, remember in Tunos we were talking about the nosei nasu. So I think when you formally create a statement, you're talking about a subject, and then you're talking about something you're saying about the subject. But in thinking, you don't have to be talking about a statement. Thinking you're talking about concepts of themselves, and you're saying to yourself, well, what is mischaber to this concept? Okay, that's not a statement. You're thinking about it. Fire, what are the qualities that are attached to fire? You talk about the color of the fire, the heat of the fire, okay? But that's before you make a statement. After you think about the concept, then you might want to formulate a statement, which is the next step. But that's why here, the mischaber or the nasu, not every mischaber is a nasu yet, but all nasus will be mischaber. Okay, so he says, the mischaber also, or the nasu, can be also divided into atzmi or mikri. Ha'atzmi hu ha'meyuchad l'nosei lefi tzoraso ha'atzmis v'nimsa bo al harov. Wow.
It sounds very similar to what he said before. He said this before by what we said before by nosei. That's the mugbal.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to make, what is the difference here? Okay.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what, I'm sitting here looking at the difference, trying to figure out what the difference in a nosei and a mischaber is. But,
well, a nosei and a mischaber, first of all, a nosei and mischaber, that's not difficult. The nosei is what you're talking about, and the mischaber are the qualities that you're attributing to it. Mischaber means what you're connecting to your nosei.
So even though, because at the beginning it says hanosei hu adavar she'yischaber elav ma. Okay, so the nosei is right. So the yischaber is what you're going to connect something to it. Okay, yeah. And then the mischaber is exactly. Mischaber on us. Okay, so I see. So one is the
and the mischaber is what you connected to it.
Right. Okay.
So there's right. Okay. There's what you're going to connect to it. There's a thing you're going to connect up to. And that's called the nosei.
So going back to his example of nosei, when he spoke about h10, so the choim is the mischaber.
Exactly. So now what does he want with this one? He will go back over them because it's tricky here.
Right, it's interesting. He didn't use the H as an example in the Mischaber, where he could have just flipped it around and used the same example. Whereas when he gave the example of ch09 for no say, he could have said the example of ch09 for Mischaber. Chaim is the Mischaber.
Right. Okay, we'll go over. Let's go over it again. Let's go through it and see if we can count. Okay. Okay, so there's certain mischaberim that are atzmi, and there's certain one that are mikri. What does he mean? Atzmi hu miyuchat l'nosei. It's peculiar to the nosei. Lefi tzoroso atzmi. Now, tzoroso atzmi means it's
essence.
Definitional term. It's essence and definition. The ninsa bo ala rov. He's going to give examples. The mikri hu she'eno miyuchad lo ve'eno nimsa bo ela b'miyuto. The mikri is something that's not peculiar to the subject, and it's not, and it's found there a minority of times. Let's look what he says. Moshe la'atzmi is the home to the.
Oh, so he does give that example. Very good. Okay.
You see?
Yeah.
That's an atzmi aspect of the yesh. But loven to a beged is mikri, because mikri all sorts of colors.
Right.
Okay.
And he didn't use Adam though, the kushi, which is interesting.
Right.
Of course, he could have used that.
But that's only because that you want to show that's mugbal. It's only limited.
Right. And over here he's not saying it's mugbal. He's saying it's just sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
Okay, like a man sitting or standing.
Right.
Okay, let's go through and go back. Okay, I'm not going to run away from it. I want to go through and get the total concept, and then go back and see if we can. And be careful about the fine distinctions. Now he says, Od metzius hanasu menosei. You see, there he goes. Nasu menosei. Very interesting. Yischalek l'shnayim. Ha'echad b'koach ve'echad b'foal. The reality of any nasu in its nosei could be one of potential or actual. What does that mean? Hametzius b'koach hu calls man shahanasu b'nosei b'chanaluvad. When he means potential, it's all the time that this predicate is in the subject, but only there potentially, b'hachana, possibly. Ve'enu b'maser. It means it has a potential to do it, but it's not actually doing it. B'foal, that is keshehagia l'maser. That's when it actually comes to the active level. Yeah. So I'll show you that I can use this program. I hope so.
What do you want to do?
There it is. I figured it out.
Oh.
No, I did it. I opened the ribbon and closed the ribbon.
Oh, okay.
And I got rid of the thing. Okay, it's fun. Thank you, Mr. Gates. Okay. Moshel HaKoach. Adam yesh b'koach lios kosev af b'shah she'eno kosev af b'shah she'eno kosev. A person has the potential to write even if he's not writing. Okay. Ub'shah shehu kosev nikra kosev b'foel. When he's actually writing, he's called writing before. But if he has just the potential and he's not writing, we say he has the koach to write, but he's not doing before. Okay? Now he's going to divide koach a little. Potential. Okay. Marshall, okay, now he says, HaKoach mischalek l'rechok v'kora. There's certain potentials which are distant and certain potentials which are close. HaRechok hu שחסרון שחסרות לו מדרגה רבos ליos נמצא בפועל. When you say it's before rachok, there's a lot of madregas until you can actually get what's happening in reality. Whereas the korov, hu she'en chasalo, ki im madrega tzeisa lafo. The korov means there's only one level that's separating it from its actual state. So, for instance, if I say the wheat has a potential to be made into bread. So there's the harvesting of the wheat and the grinding of the wheat and the sifting of the wheat and the making the flour, all the way down to the actual piece, to the bread. But if I say that the bread came out of the oven, or the bread is in the oven, let's say baking in the oven, so that would be that it has potential to be bread. It's not bread yet. It may burn up in the oven. But the step between it and its coming into foel is only one step removed. Okay? So those are the two breakdowns that he has when it comes to koach, potential. Now, he's going to give some rules about it, Mischaber. HaMischaber, he says this, HaMikra asher hu miyuchad lemin echad. If there's a certain mikra that's particular to one min, I efsha she is yaches lemin acher bilti doma lo. You cannot take that mikra and apply it to another min if that min is not comparable. Okay, so he said this before about mikrim. Mikrim, you have to be very careful because certain mikrim are only unique to certain types, and you can't move them easily to other types unless they're really doma to it. Derech mashal. Hadeya miuchedes lemina odom. Opinions is something that is peculiar to or particular to human beings. And therefore, lo tikyaches lavonim. And since that's true, you can't say that stones have opinions. Okay, that's a mikra in man. The second rule he says is hamikra hamiyuchad hashalem. Lo yipored minos o afilu rega echas. Okay, yeah. A mikra that's peculiar and exists in the whole item never leaves it, never leaves the subject, even for one moment. Okay, so Hargasha is said in Balchai. It's a mikra Balchai, and it's there all the time, never leaves it. Efshar, let's say, nos a im shlilat hamikra hamiyuchedet hashalom shalom. It's impossible to picture a subject if it doesn't have, without this mikra miyuchedes hashalom shalom. Okay, so if you don't heat, for instance, I mean, is a mikra miyuched. I don't know if it's miyuchedes because you said other things have heat also. So that's not a good example. But let's say speaking, okay, is something that's miyuched to Ben Adam, at least in its definition. So you can't picture him without it. Not that he's not speaking kol champol. It means definitionally. HaMischaber yeomer b'nosei b'chibur lo b'hechlat. The Mischaber is said in the subject, attached to it, but not necessarily absolute. What does that mean? Parashah. Ki ha-Mischaber she'omer hiyoso nasu b'nos o, yuvan bo hiyos echad min ha-mikrim mistabek menose ad shitor nos'o bo. V'hu hanikra lemedaktikin shem toar kagon chacham or gibor. He says that the mischaber, which is a nosu of a nose, it's a predicate of a nose, is yuvan bo yosechad min mikrim. It's one of the mikrim that are attached to the nose, which describes it, and that's what people call adjectives. Kagon, chacham, or gibor. So the chachma, let's see, chachma is an attribute of man, but we can turn it into a shem toar of a person by calling him a chacham. Achamikra behechlet hu sheyikrohu hamedaktikin shem davar she'ein noseh mitoar b'mikra kagon chachma or gevura. The muchlat is the thing itself, the shem of the noun, which is not a description of a subject, but the thing itself. So what's the difference between a chacham and chachma? Chachma is the concept itself, and the chacham is something that is attributed to a human being, and we call him a chacham. Okay, let's go over this chapter again. Very subtle stuff. And I always said, I speak to Bill Hagner, my friend, also all the time, the challenge here is to apply it. Okay, so when we have to show the nafkaminas here. We have to apply it to the Gemara, and we also have to show nafkaminas of
I have all different things.
When you make hekishim and this and all these different things, okay? That's the real challenge here. Or else it just stays abstract. Okay, let's go through this again, okay? We said, first of all, the mischaber is the thing that is going to be attached to the subject, okay? Or the nasu, doesn't matter, it's what we're attaching to the subject. So we divide it into the tochachi and the nismach. He divides it into the
nismach and nitzav achona.
La'atzmi and the mikri. Let's see, that's what I'm trying to get at myself here. There's the tochachi here and the nismach. That's the first division he makes. What's the tochachi? That's an internal quality of the subject. That's internal. Nismach just means it's associated with, but it's not speaking about an internal aspect of. Okay, is that clear? So for instance, like the clothes on a man is something that's associated with man, but it's not talking about the man, an internal aspect of it.
Right.
Heat or speech or feeling, all these things are talking about the internal aspects of the subject. But his clothes or things that happened before it or after it, or things that limited like time, those are also external aspects that are related to the subject, but not talking about the subject itself. Okay, so that's the first chiluk that he makes.
He doesn't give an example of a tochi that's miyuchad, does he? He does not.
That's miyuchad.
No,
Miyuchad hasholem.
Miyuchad hasholem. Oh yeah, the hergish. Right, because he divides it. Okay, so it's the hergish and the miyuchad hasholem is the hergish labal chai. So that's something that's internal to a bal chai, and it has to be there. all
And
times.
it's there all it's all over it, I guess.
Right.
It's miyuchad. Shelo yitzah mino serim min echad yischalek l'sholem v'dot ichad. It's miyuchad.
Right, and the other one would be.
It's also sholem. It's also sholem. What does it
It's
mean,
all the
sholem?
time.
That
It's there all the time.
It's all the time there.
Hergish is always there.
Hergish is always there. Okay.
Right, so I'm trying to apply this to other objects. Take a car. What is the motor to the car? What are the wheels to the car? Is it something that's miyuchad? No, it's not miyuchad because there are other things that have wheels also. So I guess that's what you have to start thinking about.
Right.
Because hergish is something that's miyuchad to a person because it's only people. Only Baalei Chai have hergish, and it's shalom because this that is miyuchat to the Baalei Chai is always there, whereas the bilti shalom is there, but not all the time. So Schaik, he said, is an example, and we gave the example of speech, which is which a person has but doesn't have it all the time, but nothing else has it. There's nothing else in the world that has speech or Schaik.
Right. That's why they're miyuchad. Miyuchad means it's unique to that min. You see?
So not every
means qualities that are unique to that subject.
Right. So, but not everything has.
What's the difference between a shalom and bilti shalom?
Whether it's there all the time.
How is whether it's there all the time. That's
right. Right. Not every object or not everything is going to have a quality that's miyuchad.
Well, if it's a unique object, yeah, I think every object does have a miyuchad.
Well, it would have to be then.
Or else it wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah, but it would have to have a combination. You'd have to say that it's a combination of things that make it unique. So let's go if cars and trucks. They have wheels, they have motors, they have cars, they have brakes, they have steering wheels, they have gas tanks, they have places to put things, they have places for the driver to sit. So right now you can't even tell the difference from what I described. What's a car and what's a truck? Then you'd have to talk about the size. It's one is large, one is small.
What does separate a car from a truck?
So it would be the size. But so first you have to identify this as a vehicle, and then you could say what type of vehicle, and then you could say the size is something that would identify it. But there are other things that are large and other things that are small in the world also. So you can't say this thing is large, and you would know that it's a truck because maybe you're talking about a house. If I say this thing laughs, you know I'm talking about a person because there's nothing else in the world that laughs. If you say it speaks, you know I'm talking about a person because there's nothing else in the world that speaks. Well, that's not true today. We have computers that speak. We have radios that speak. But that's not really speech. That's just synthesized speech.
Right. That's like an echo, really.
Right.
But
I think, and that's so. The question is, could you say something is miyuchad when it has a combination of attributes, which then make you identified? If you say this combination of attributes are miyuchad.
Well, when you talk about a truck, for instance, right? So the truck has to exist within a certain sort of things, like say vehicles, right? And then you have to say what's the hebdel between it and the other min in its class. There has to be something that separates.
Right.
So the question is, what is it? Is it the size? Is it the function of what it does, like carries? Maybe a few things that separate it. But in order to have in order to say something is a unique type, then there has to be a quality that's unique to it.
Right.
You know, I mean, you or else it's the same thing as everything else. I mean, you don't make a distinction, right?
Right.
And sometimes it becomes a little fuzzy, right?
But when you're talking about a mischaber, that is a tochi, that is a miyuchad hashalem, right? So that would mean that it's something which is, again, miyuchad means that it's shalom because it always exists within that thing that it's mischaber to, b'chol zman, and then nothing else. So it sounds like if he would describe that the attribute would be something which is that attribute in and of itself.
Well, take your truck. So what?
There, I don't think there is no one single attribute that a truck has which nothing else has.
Well, then why do you call it a truck and not a car?
Because it's a combination of attributes. Is that right?
Well, we have to talk about it. Like, for instance, it's calmless. The size is different than a car.
Right.
Right.
See, I'm looking for something. Right. So my question. That's my question. My question is whether this example of hergish or example of schaik, which if you just mention schaik, you know which no-say has schaik in it. There is no other no-say in the world which has schaik. Now, schaik is not shalom because a person doesn't always have schaik, but there is nothing else in the world that has schaik. There's nothing else in the world besides balei chai that have hergish. Now, it happens to be we're picking a very broad. If you were to say describe a motor, not a motor, but let's say if we would pick out the type of an engine that cars have, call it a drivetrain. You would say, okay, vehicles have drivetrains. There's nothing else in the world that has drivetrains except for vehicles. So you're going very broad, but you're saying within that category of vehicles, I know that the only way for it to be a vehicle is that it has a drivetrain in it. Otherwise, it's not a vehicle. And there's nothing else in the world that has a drivetrain except for a vehicle. But I can't narrow down. For example, you can't narrow down between women and men by using schaik, because both men have schaik and women have schaik. So you can't get through a narrow within the category of vehicles. It's like you can't get into. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to get to a narrow category of car and truck within a vehicle by picking out one attribute.
Okay, like you said, it may be a combination. It could also be size and function.
Right.
That makes it different.
Right.
You need both those qualities.
Right, but that would not be called a mischaber. That's a miyucha. That's a showing. Maybe he has something else that you would call that.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For instance, say it carries things. A lot of things carries. But it's a vehicle that carries things. So a car also carries things.
Right.
So it's not miyuchat to it.
Right. But you see, he's using such a broad term of Baal Chai for hergish, because Baal Chai includes people, plants, not plants, but
animals.
Animals.
Yeah. Grass, go out.
Right. Fish. Maybe, I don't know. What is hergish? Hergish means that they feel. So insects also, they have feelers, they have antennae, they go around, they feel things.
Yeah, they all have the ability to feel.
Right. So he's using, but since he has such a broad category, he's able to find one thing that's common across everything within that category.
Right. I mean, when you get down to the different types of animals, then you'd have to say what's miyuchat.
Right.
To, difference between a lion and a tiger or something like that.
Right.
So then what's the difference? You know, I mean, it becomes much more difficult to ascertain what's the
Right.
miyuchad quality.
So it may not. There may not be a miyuchad quality. That's what I'm saying. There may not be a miyuchad quality to differentiate between lions and tigers, or even a lion and giraffe.
Well, it happens to be. Well, there happens to be. The question is, how do you talk about it? I mean, the form is different. They all have organs. You know, they all have livers and I think livers and stomachs and all those things. So what's the difference? It's only the skeletal structure or something like that.
Right.
The form of the animal.